Hi, everybody. It's me, the Fetch, host of Inside the Eye Live. Before the Sunday mainstream media political pundit talk shows, there is Inside the Eye Live, where we break down some of the weekly mainstream media talking points before the talking points even get aired. Add in some entertaining stories, weather, cats, intriguing and informative guests, and you get one of the most listened to Saturday morning streaming media political talk shows going today. And it's all right here on our flagship station, Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. So join me, the Fetch, for Inside the Eye Live every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern. It is truly intelligent media for the politically aware.
Welcome to Sacred Matrix, a divine paradigm of love and universal consciousness, with your host, Janet Kira Lesson and Dr. Sasha Lesson.
Together, we transform the world.
And now, here are your hosts, Janet Kira and Dr. Sasha Lesson.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Sacred Matrix on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com with your host, Janet Kira Lesson and Dr. Sasha Lesson. And today we have a very special episode with our guest, Dan Willis. Oh, did I say freedomslips.com? Okay. I'll make sure I got it all in there. And Dan Willis is one of the Disclosure Project's top secret military witnesses that testified at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. in 2001 in front of every major media. This was a world disclosure event which was asking for a congressional hearing in order to bring forth the witness scientists within the Black projects who can release the technologies that have been hidden for over 60 years that could stop further damage to our planet. But instead, the message was sanitized by a controlled mainstream media. From his personal first-hand experiences and looking into the historical indicators that have been purposely omitted from our education system that reveals an infiltration of unwarranted influences operating behind the secrecy established for our national security system, which they use to control our indoctrination, which forms the public's perception of the, quote, agreed upon reality in order to hide their illegal operations and why they fear disclosing the truth about the extraterrestrial reality. So Dan is an ex-radio broadcast engineer and ABC newsman, and he has taken a keen interest in how the mainstream media has withheld disclosure of the full message to the public, a message based on the hundreds of credible military and intelligence witness testimonies. And he has written an article, which is really a book, and I'm encouraging him to publish it, which is entitled, and answers the question, who controls the agreed upon reality through the mainstream media, and why do they fear disclosing the truth about this extraterrestrial reality? And of course, Dan says, the answer to this question, you must ultimately decide for yourself. And we're going to look at this article, amazing article, and talk to Dan, and he's going to tell us all kinds of good things that's going to wake you up to what's really going on this planet. Dr. Lesson, would you like to say something before we bring on Dan?
Oh, yeah. I'm particularly interested in the aspect of your work, Dan, where about the Nazis. My ancestors escaped to America to avoid them, and research that I've been looking at lately shows that they actually have infiltrated the United States. And as I delved a little deeper, I know you go into this, I know more about it, that Admiral Byrd lost the last battle of World War II, the Battle of the Weddell Sea, and lost 65 Marines in the seaplane tender Pine Island to flying saucers that the Nazis had developed that had zapped some of the seaplanes and the Pine Island, and it was only friendly extra biological entities who let us back engineer discs like that protected us from the Nazis and their reptilian allies under Antarctica from just overwhelming the globe, and that Hitler himself escaped down there, and goes on and on and on. And I started reading your book, and oh my gosh, you know more detail than anyone I know about this stuff, so I want to learn as much as I can from you.
Yeah, Sash was starting to read your article. So, Dan, welcome, and thank you for coming on our show. What a pleasure. I'm honored to be here.
It's a real pleasure to be on your show. Yeah, we need to keep spiking the collective awareness.
Yes, we're having a little bit of a drop-off. If Sean, if it gets too bad, we might want to call our phones as a backup, but let's see how it goes.
Okay.
My question, Dan, Sasha has this question, but I get to start because I'm the girl, is what's the difference between the 2001 disclosure hearing on Capitol Hill and the event that was held last year on the disclosure event that was a mock, it was in the press club. They should both in the press club, right?
Congressional hearing.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good question.
Did you participate in both?
I wonder if we could reconnect. I keep hearing my voice feeding back. Do you hear that?
Yeah. Sean, do you want to try maybe calling us on our phones? Hold on.
Yeah, we didn't have that earlier.
No, we didn't, and that sometimes happens when we go live. Well, Sean's not. I don't know. I don't see what's going on with Sean. Maybe try to text. Well, let's continue, and I'll text him, and we'll get to the point. Maybe he stepped away. So, go ahead.
Yes, go ahead, Janet.
I asked you the question.
Okay.
And I'm not getting a response from Sean, so let's proceed until I'll text him, okay? But until let's proceed so we don't have to
distinguish between the hearings is what
the hearings. What's the difference?
Let's see. Okay. I'm gonna make sure it's not on my end over here.
It could be on ours. We don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
sounds good actually right now.
When I talk to you, I can see your Skype is echoing back. So, do you have any speakers on or anything like that?
No, I don't have anything on.
Oh, okay. All right. It's highly difficult to talk. Okay.
Yeah.
The 2013
All right,
versus
and I'm trying to get a hold of Sean, who's probably stepped away for a moment to call us back, and we're likely.
I could reconnect with you, Janet.
I can't pull you into the back end. Sean has to do it. Okay, I'm texting him.
Okay.
I don't know where he is. Okay. Okay. Well, I only have one computer on right now. They're all also shut off, so it must be a Skype function. And as soon as Sean gets this message, he will call.
Okay.
I'll talk to him on his phone.
All right.
Talk
yeah.
The echoes let's say we're having echoes in this machine. How can we use that and have some fun with it?
I'm going to call Sean. I'm sure he just stepped away. Help, Sean. What does?
Well, if I can. Okay.
No, it's pretty bad. Hold on. Hold on, listeners. We're getting stuff. Calling to text Sean.
There we go. The radio yodel.
Sorry, listeners. Oh, wait. Did it
Hi,
stop?
listeners. Yes, we're having fun.
Okay.
Hey, okay. I don't know what's going on. This happened yesterday. There's a conspiracy to keep us off the air. We must be going to say something really important. They've looked in the future with their time machine and they're trying to stop us.
Well, I've been quiet for over a decade on this, and I just recently decided, to start talk shows and things, just to do whatever, to keep with the facts, with the real facts behind this that have been suppressed from mankind. And we have the proof of this, but the trouble is mainstream media is not getting it across.
And what's behind that? We're going to talk about all the little nuances of this, but who's controlling all this? Who do you think, in all your research and you've looked with all these whistleblowers, what's going on? Who's at the top of the pyramid pulling the puppet strings of everybody underneath?
Well, let's hope Sean gets back, and it makes it a lot easier to talk. But how this whole thing started is if I take my headphones off and just talk through the microphone and bring them back on. You know how it is when the feedback, when you're trying to talk and you're having your voice delayed coming back at you, it trips you up really bad. So
I think
what happened?
I think somehow I'm on his phone. Sean, are you? Did you disconnect us? I don't even know if we're on the air.
You're live. You're on your mobile now.
Okay, I'm on my mobile, so you have to call Sasha's mobile as well. Okay, Sean? Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sean, can you hear the feedback happening when I'm talking? All of a sudden, it stopped.
Yeah, I hear it.
Yeah.
It's probably from Janet's line. I'll bring in Sasha on the mobile. You guys can keep going.
Okay. Just keep talking, and Sasha will be there in just a moment.
Oh, good. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1. Talking about a planet trapped in a lie for many years. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. You're loud and clear. Sean will be calling you. Just said, don't touch me. He's calling. We're getting everybody on. Okay. Here we go. Answer your phone, honey. It's ringing.
Okay.
Okay.
I think he's trying to get it. Let me know when we're clear. Okay. All right. So let's get back to our show here. Well, the difference between the two is, I was invited to the citizen hearing disclosure by Stephen Bassett, but I had a time conflict. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it, but he had a lot of good witnesses there.
Okay, there he is. Go in the other room. You've got to go in the other room. Okay, he has to go in the other room so we don't get feedback. All right, now we can start. So you couldn't go to the second one because he had a lot of
I had a time conflict. I live in a cement geodesic dome off grid on top of a mountain, and the planning department insisted I get it done that particular month with no so I had to keep working. But anyway.
Yes.
So what happened, the difference is that Stephen Bassett is doing amazing work. I would suggest anybody going to paradigmresearchorganization.org and join in on the Twitter storm. There's like 500,000 tweets going in for disclosure into Washington, and I just want to invite everybody to support Stephen Bassett and his great work he's doing. But what happened with the 2001, how that whole thing came about, was President Clinton had a high interest in the UFO subject, and so he had his Director of Central Intelligence, James Woolsey, look into getting the classified files. Hello? Okay. Okay. And so we're getting that feedback happening again, I think. So what happened was the Director of Central Intelligence tried to get this information. He was denied access through our legal constitutional government, through the normal channels. In other words, there's a rogue operation going on within our government that is infiltrated. And so a very frustrated CIA director couldn't go through those channels, so he went to the civilian sector and contacted Dr. Stephen Greer, who was at the time the director of the Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence. They had a special meeting. Dr. Greer brought a huge stack of documents substantiating the reality. And the first words out of the CIA director's mouth was, I know the subject's real. I'm trying to figure out why the hell I can't gain access to it. And so Dr. Greer, becoming aware of the gravity of the situation, that our government officials are being denied access, especially at that high a level, he met with some military advisors and decided that, just bringing a few witnesses forward usually get discredited or worse. And so they decided to start the witness archival project. Could maybe on the other one we could mute on the one that Sasha Lesson, if you could hit a mute button on that. It's feeding back once in a while. Okay. So what he did was he started collecting witnesses from 1993 to 2000, in which he collected over 450 witnesses that were in the military, corporate, and intelligence community, and decided to go to the National Press Club with all these witnesses. And in addition to this, we also have the scientists within the black projects that they've had the technologies for over 60 years now that could get us off of nuclear, oil, and coal. They've had faster-than-light craft that was developed back in, we know for sure back in the 50s. And so the explosive evidence that was happening at that event, which was on May 9th, 2001, about 4 months before the 9/11 event, which everything went off the radar at that point. There was 22 cameras in the back row. Everybody went forth, willing to break national security oaths. Each one of us stated that we're willing to testify under oath, under penalty of perjury, in front of a congressional hearing. The conference the place was packed. It was like the largest in the history of the National Press Club online. About 500,000 people were lined up to go on, but the first hour was electronically jammed. And if you'd like, I can play, this is the longest clip I have. It condenses a couple of the explosive testimonies of the National Press Club. The first one is John Callahan. He's head of the FAA administration investigations, and he had a UFO that was like 4 times the size of a 747. He had all the radar, military radar, the computer tracking, all the information that substantiated. The CIA came in, confiscated it all, sworn everybody to secrecy, but he had backups, and he brought all the information.
That's great.
Let me go ahead and play this, and then we'll discuss it. We also have people on retrieval cases. People have seen the bases on the dark side of the moon very clearly. 57 different species of extraterrestrials were already categorized by 1989. And here we go with just a little 6 minutes of the hour-and-a-half press conference.
Okay, go for it.
The CIA, one of the CIA men told the people they were now sworn to secrecy that this meeting never happened and this event never happened. When I asked why, I thought it was probably just a stealth bomber at the time. He says, well, this is the first time that we have recorded radar data on a UFO, and these guys are going to get all excited, drooling over all this data. I said, well, you're going to tell the public about it. And he says, no, we don't tell the public about this. It would panic the public.
I was stationed at Malmstrom Air Force Base, Montana, as a missile launch officer. I got a call from my security guard, primary security guard upstairs. I was downstairs 60 feet underground in a capsule monitoring and controlling 10 nuclear-tipped Minuteman missiles. I got a call that morning that they were seeing strange lights flying in the sky. I got another call, and this time it was a more intense tone in the guard's voice. It was very clearly very frightened. He said there was a bright, glowing red object hovering outside the front gate. It was oval-shaped. He had all the other guards out there with their weapons drawn. My weapons started going down, one after the other. They went into a no-go condition, what we call a no-go condition. They were unlaunchable within minutes of having received that second phone call of a UFO hovering outside the front gate. We were informed that a similar incident happened at Echo Flight. They lost all 10 of their weapons, where UFOs were sighted over the launch facilities.
So we were taking pictures all the time for verification of nuclear disarmament. And there was some objects in those pictures that didn't belong there. The second prong to this whole thing is that a lot of people talk about conspiracies over shadow government. I'm willing to testify before Congress that these black operations do exist.
I was stationed at Langley Air Force Base in Virginia. In 1965, I was loaned to the Lunar Orbiter Project at NASA on Langley Field. I went to the facility, and when I walked into the facility, there were scientists from all over the world. A airman second class was in the dark room at that time. About 30 minutes into the process, he said to me, in a very distressed way, by the way, we've discovered a base on the backside of the moon. And then he proceeded to put photographs down in front of me, and clearly in these photographs were structures, mushroom-shaped buildings, spherical buildings, and towers. And at that point, I was very concerned because I knew we were working on compartmentalized security. He had breached security, and I was actually frightened at that moment. I worked there for 3 more days, and I remember going home and naively thinking, I can't wait to hear about this on the evening news. And here it is, more than 30 years later, and I hope we hear about it tonight. And I will testify under oath before Congress that what I'm saying is the truth.
I was able to go into restricted areas, which this was. And this was an aerial photograph of the Earth and the shadows of the craft or whatever it was. But I realized at this point that it's very secret, that it was kept secret, because I asked him, what are you going to do with this piece of information? And he said, we always airbrush these out before we sell them to the public. And it was a picture of a UFO. Another incident, I knew someone in quarantine with the Apollo astronauts. He told me that the Apollo astronauts saw craft on the moon when we landed. And that is what he told me. And he also was afraid, he said that the astronauts are told to keep this quiet. They're not allowed to talk about it. So I do want to let you know that I worked out there for a number of years, and I ran into this. So it's not something everyone knows that works out there for a long time. My boss didn't know about it. It's very strange because I don't know how they can do it, but they can let some people know about it and then others not. I'm willing to testify before Congress that what I'm saying is true.
That I was involved in situations where we actually did recoveries of crashed saucers, for lack of a better term, debris thereof. There were bodies that were involved with some of these crashes, also some were alive. While we were doing all this, we were telling the American public there was nothing to it. We were telling the world there was nothing to it. But the whole situation is, we've set back, we've told the American people that there's no such thing as UFOs. I've been involved where we have recovered these objects. We know them to be of extraterrestrials. I was the first person to go ahead and see that there were bodies on it. That would be the first of approximately 12 events. UFO crashes are not events that take place every day. They're rare. I know we're not alone in the universe. I know that the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. It's evidence that has been denied to the American people. I stand before you today in my almighty God, and I tell you this. If Congress calls me in, I stand here today prepared and ready to do just that. Governments must never lie to the people.
My question is to Clifford Stone. You said that you had seen aliens on a craft that had crashed. I wondered if you could describe what they looked like.
I could, but it would probably take a whole lot of time. The reason I state that, when I got out in 1989, we had cataloged 57 different species. You have individuals that look very much like you and myself that could walk among us and you wouldn't even notice the difference, except for some of the things that they might be able to go ahead, even in a dark room, and touch an object and go ahead and identify what color that object might be. They would have a heightened sense of smell, sight, hearing. The situation is that you had at least 3 types of the grays. You had some that were much taller than we were. The unique thing that I'd like to point out for the most part is that the entities that we did catalog were in fact humanoid beings, so to speak, not necessarily look humanoid or be bipedal such as we are. But apparently we got quite a few of the species out there that are humanoid in appearance.
Well, that's just a small snapshot of the hour and a half of some of the witness testimony. And, my testimony was, pretty, I had a high-level top-secret clearance, crypto level 14 with extra-sensitive material handling clearance back in 1969. Most of the witnesses there, by the way, incredible testimonies that you can hear. A lot of them brought supporting, collaborating documentation. Like the Air Force Office of Special Investigations, Commander Bethune brought his papers from the Navy. I tried to get the message papers from the Office of Naval Intelligence, but they told me it's been destroyed. So unlike the other witnesses, I wasn't able to bring supporting documentation, only my testimony. And what my testimony
was... Well, it's really difficult a lot of times for these whistleblowers that are in the Black Project is that they don't have any documentation. They're being paid out of secret funds. They don't have official titles. I have a couple whistleblowers that come forth, and it's like there's no way that they can provide, the normal documentation that researchers want to have so they can prove who they are. So what do you do with those situations? So that's what's happening.
Right.
So I wanted to ask you a couple things. So the gentleman that was talking about the nuclear
Robert Salas.
Robert Salas. So my question is who doesn't want us to nuke each other? Were they just doing it as a show of power? Has anybody come to any realization or conclusions on what was going on there? Are they, a lot of people in the UFO field say, well, there's a force of the extraterrestrials that love humanity, and they're not going to let us blow each other up. And here's part of the evidence is what happened with, Robert Salas and other people who described how the nukes were neutralized. What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, there's some noise coming in from the other, and it hit on certain key words, and my hearing's not so great too because of the Vietnam War and everything. Could you what was the question about Robert Salas's testimony again?
My
Janet?
question is, a lot of the UFO researchers say that because of the Chinese coming in and neutralizing the nukes, that they won't let us destroy ourselves. That's
they showed a grave concern. One thing Robert Salas said. The other Skype contact, Sasha Lesson, it keeps blurping in and it's distracting, and if you could put a mute
Sasha,
on that.
do you want to just turn off your phone and come in here and we'll share one phone? That might
Just put on mute. It keeps burping in and it wipes out certain words that you're saying.
Okay, he's going to put it on mute.
Thank you. It's much better. It's very distracting. Okay, what Robert Salas said that, basically just a light beam came in and shut down all the nuclear weapons came back online after they left. But as he was saying, there was a glowing red elliptical object out in front. And he said, if they wanted to, they could have just destroyed the nuclear missiles, but they didn't. They're basically just giving a message that what you're dealing with here is something that you don't want to deal with, and for the human race. the saucer went over to the another nuclear launch facility about 60 miles away, did the same thing over there, shut down all their nuclear as well. There was 21 witnesses out of the 500 witnesses altogether that were willing to, go to the National Press Club. One of them was Larry Warren, who worked over at the Brentwaters Air Force Base, and they did the same thing over there when they had a alien craft come out in the forest out there. They basically put a light beam in, and they weren't supposed to have nuclear weapons there. This is in England. And
right.
They reprogrammed all of their missiles as well. And my testimony was, a very small testimony. I'll just share that with you.
Okay.
I worked at the busiest military communication facility on the planet in 1969, at the time we went to the moon. And I took thousands of top secret messages. I was in charge of the code room, where I was a high-speed certified code operator. And a USN ship off the coast of Alaska, the crew witnessed coming off of port bow a brightly reddish-orange elliptical object, about 70 feet in diameter, was coming out of the ocean and then shot straight up into space, and the ship's radar tracked it going over 7,000 miles per hour. This message was classified as secret, priority level, going to the Chief of Naval Operations in Washington, D.C. This is I was only about 20 years old at the time, and so, when I was a little kid, I used to love the science fiction movies of the 50s and everything, but, that, out of the thousands of messages I took, that one just burned an image in my head. And then years later, I worked for about 13 years at the Naval Electronic Engineering Center, working on military satellite communications. My coworker, actually I had two interesting experiences. One coworker worked at the NORAD facility. When he first started working, he noticed on the screens that track everything in space, these objects going thousands of miles per hour, right off the scale and doing right-angled turns. When he inquired, his older supervisor told him, it was just a visit from one of our little friends. And the Navy captain I worked with on the satellite equipment, he worked at White Sands, and he said World War III happened a couple of times, but the ETs, and he was a very conservative Republican kind of guy, and he was sharing his stuff with me. So, you'd be surprised, the stories that come out of all this. But,
so wait,
when
you go back, you said that World War III almost happened a couple times, or did happen? You broke up a little bit there. What did you say?
In other words, as they shot things up into space, the ETs took them out.
Okay. So there's something up there that's stopping them from. What were they shooting up in space?
We're essentially quarantined on this planet.
We're quarantined.
They don't want us to take our nuclear weapons out into space.
Well, that's good to know. I know Carol Rosen is launching a campaign to keep nukes from space, but maybe the ETs have already taken care of it. They're just not letting us do it, correct?
Well, yeah, the interesting, the testimony of Werner von Braun too, about that they were planning on hoaxing an extraterrestrial threat. Well, we know one of our witnesses that was there, which was Mark McCandish. I'll just play this, is like 20 seconds long.
Okay.
They were witnessing the alien reproduction vehicles, and this was like back in 1988, I believe, in November, at Norton Air Force Base, where it was a special exhibit, 3 hovering craft, and according to a 4-star general, they had already transversed most of the solar system already. So you can imagine the rockets that we have representing our state-of-the-art NASA going into space is basically expensive Hollywood props to kind of distract from the real technology that's been used in a secret space program. Here's that little short clip.
Personally witnessed 3 flying saucers at a very large hangar at Norton Air Force Base. The presentation that Brad talked about was for top military brass and certain congressional but the fact that there were 3 discs at that exhibit. These discs were hovering off the floor without any visible means of support. They were referred to as alien reproduction vehicles.
And he brought a complete diagram, and I sat down in Washington with him and went over, because he knew I had a good technical background. And it's interesting that the alien reproduction vehicle, which means that it was reverse engineered from alien technology.
Why do they call them reproduction vehicles?
I mean they replicated it. They reproduced it based on extraterrestrial designs that were reverse engineered. And let's see, actually I have a little clip talking about the, General Lovkin, another one of our witnesses, was on Eisenhower's staff, where he actually saw the wreckage on one of the crashes that happened out in New Mexico. And here's a little less than 2 minutes.
Okay.
We were in the basement of the Pentagon, and in those days, that was in 1959, there was a tremendous amount of security there in the base of the Pentagon. Anybody who's worked there knows what I'm talking about. Colonel Hollibird brought out a piece of what appeared to be metallic, it looked like a yardstick. It had deciphering, it had encryption on it. He describe them as being symbols of instruction, and that's as far as he would go. But he did infer that the instructions, whatever they might have been, were something that was important enough for the military to keep working on a constant basis. It seemed giant-like when I saw it, because it was the first time I'd ever seen anything like this before, and all eyes were just peeled on that particular thing. And when he told us what it was, it was frightening. It was eerie. There, you could have heard a pin drop in the room when it was first mentioned. Well, he said it had been taken from one of the craft that had crashed in New Mexico, and that it had been taken from a box of materials that the military was working on. They didn't use the word reverse engineering at that time, but it was something similar to the reverse engineering that they felt like they needed to work on, and it was going to take years to do this. Extraterrestrial bodies, yes. There were either 3 or 5, and one was alive, partially alive at the time that this happened, and I do not know what may have happened to him after that.
Yeah, General Lovkin was on Eisenhower's staff, and he was aware of a lot of this stuff happening back in the 1950s. So a lot of people are past P101, you could say, where we know we're being visited by extraterrestrials. A lot of people have had, there's so many thousands of sightings. It's been escalating lately. People are becoming so aware of the reality of this. And a lot of people are aware that, the government has been, purposely saying, oh, there's no evidence, whatsoever. But, here we have over 500 witnesses, which include astronauts, generals, admirals, many with supporting, collaborating documentation, don't even know each other. Willing to testify under oath before Congress, and you're telling me that's no evidence, so, so it's just a matter of, who's in control of this. When I was there at the National Press Club at the 22 cameras of all the major networks, and giving this testimony, I couldn't imagine how the world cannot be this same, because what they were talking about is that we've had at least proof of at least 2 presidential administrations that have been denied access, along with CIA directors, Joint Chiefs of Intelligence, people who in our legal, we the people government rather, should have access if anybody had access. But it appears.
Well, let me ask you a question about that. Kennedy knew, Nixon knew, Reagan knew, So which ones are being left out? I have witnesses that are saying that Reagan was in the loop. Yesterday, Carter was in the loop. I don't know if that's the truth, that they're being left out. I think they're all part of the good old boys club. I think that the reverse is true, that they're acting like they're left out for some reason. So what's your thoughts on that? We know that Eisenhower had several meetings with them. They landed on some Air Force bases. We have all these stories. What are your thoughts on that before we continue with the disclosure?
Well, of the different people, you know that President Carter, one of his campaign promises was to bring out the classified files on the UFOs. As you know, he had a UFO experience. But one of the 21 witnesses that I was with, Daniel Sheehan, our legal counsel, here's what he had to say regarding President Carter.
President Carter held a meeting with then the Director of Central Intelligence, who was George Bush Sr., and demanded that the Director of Central Intelligence turn over to the President the classified information about unidentified flying objects and the information that was in the possession of the United States intelligence community concerning the existence of extraterrestrial intelligence. This information was refused to the President of the United States by the Director of Central Intelligence, George Bush Sr.
So there are people who are on the inner circle, I guess you could say, and there are people who are not. And Kennedy, tried to do warnings about the secret societies and about the infiltration, and Eisenhower tried to warn us about the unwarranted influences, and only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry could protect our liberties in the future. When you look at all the, the most explosive thing to me was the fact that we were seeking a congressional hearing to bring forth these scientists, these witness scientists within these black projects that were willing to come forth in an open congressional hearing and prove to the world, this is back in 2001, that we have a solution to stop the damage to the environment on our planet and to end the energy crisis. That they had zero-point energy devices, they had anti-gravity, across the board, amazing breakthroughs in just about every aspect of science. And I was trying to wonder, here with 22 cameras, how could all this be disclosed and saying that we reverse engineered these technologies and we know how they work and we have the scientists? How could all that be sanitized? Because I had a dream before going to Washington that because I became aware of the hundreds of witness testimonies. I studied and read all the testimonies, met with the witnesses, and in my dream, an MJ-12 operative got up there to the podium and discredited all of us, said, this is a top secret project here and there, and I went up to him and shook his hand, and I said, I got to hand it to you. You've been keeping this lie going for so long. You've done such an incredible job keeping it up. But when I went to Washington, they didn't need any MJ-12 operative to discredit it. If I may, I'd like to play about a minute and a half of CNN, which is actually a flagship of the news media, of the mainstream media, with their coverage, and how they were able to take that subject and basically saying, we want to have congressional hearings on the reality of UFOs and if there's life on other planets. And this is how they did it. I'll go ahead and shoot that.
Life on other planets? Some former military and government personnel say they have proof there is. Elaine Quijano explains.
We've seen the photographs and heard the stories of what some say is evidence of UFOs. Now a group of scientists, former Air Force and FAA officials, is lending its voice to the argument that we are not alone. Dr. Stephen Greer heads up the Disclosure Project, a group that compiles information from people who say they've encountered extraterrestrial forms of life.
We can establish through this testimony that these objects of extraterrestrial origin have been tracked on radar going thousands of miles per hour, stopping and making right-hand turns.
Since 1993, Dr. Greer says he has videotaped testimony from more than 100 people about what they say are close encounters. People like retired Navy Commander pilot Graham Bethune, who believes he saw a UFO 50 years ago while flying to Newfoundland.
Then it appeared over to the right and moved out slowly and flew with us. It was still not at our altitude, but we could see the shape of it. It had a dome.
In addition, the Disclosure Project says it has documents supporting its case, including FAA records and CIA memos. What do members plan to do with their information? They hope Congress and President Bush take notice. They want to see congressional hearings into the matter, despite criticism from skeptics.
Those that don't want to believe you will never believe you anyway, so it doesn't matter. It doesn't change the truth.
A spokesperson for the Senate Science, Technology, and Space Committee says no congressional hearings are planned right now. Elaine Quijano, CNN.
Now, you can imagine the average person sitting back watching the CNN news. You get the impression that, wow, they collected all those witnesses and, well, maybe there's something to the UFO reality, but I doubt taxpayers are going to want to spend money on the basis of whether or not UFOs are real or not. And this was like 9 months, this is like 4 months before the 9/11 event, which of course everything went off the radar. But you have to understand that, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, they were spinning it so that at the end they said they're not planning any more hearings. So like it was unimportant and it's just being dismissed. And then of course they were just spinning it. I don't know what other testimony was there. Or I guess you were talking about, extraterrestrials walking among us and 57 different species. They're still keeping it in lights in the sky, that there really isn't any interaction here with humanity, which is, a bunch of bull.
It's a matter of, you have to understand that the CIA controls the media, especially on this subject, and the CIA is tied into the Tavistock Institute, which works with psychological think tanks, which billions of dollars and thousands of think tanks put together to carefully craft the perception of the news, and so that people get a particular perception. And so it sanitizes it. That's why the government continually comes back with there's absolutely no evidence, while the mainstream media says, maybe we are not alone, which would work if, they wanted to put in the back of everybody's mind the possibility of extraterrestrial life, in case they wanted to do some false flag scenario in the future. But what I want you to do is pay close attention. Out of the first hour, it was a lot of explosive information put out, about, CIA directors being denied access and about the technologies and everything like that. But what they did was they took one little snippet that could work with just making it sound like we're talking about the reality of UFOs, where Dr. Greer is saying these objects of extraterrestrial origin have been tracked on radar going thousands of miles per hour, stopping and making right-hand turns. But pay close attention to what he says after stopping and making right-hand turns.
We can establish through this testimony that these objects of extraterrestrial origin have been tracked on radar going thousands of miles per hour, stopping and making right-hand turns. That they use anti-gravity propulsion systems, which we have already figured out how they work in classified projects in the United States, Great Britain, and elsewhere. That these objects have landed on terra firma, at times have been disabled, and have been retrieved specifically by teams within the United States. That extraterrestrial life forms have been retrieved, and their vehicles have been taken and studied thoroughly for at least 50 years. We can prove through the testimony and documents that we will be presenting that this subject has been hidden from members of Congress and at least 2 presidential administrations, and that the Constitution of the United States has been subverted by the growing power of these classified projects, and that this is a danger to the national security.
And that truly is the danger to the national security of the United States, of we, the people, constitutional government, because these rogue operations, our legal counsel said that they cannot use, we have not had any threats, although there have been many threats and things have happened to witnesses in the past. Since we did the press club in 2001, to my knowledge, none of the other witnesses have been threatened, because they cannot use the rule of law against us, because they are an illegal rogue operation operating outside of our constitutional government, so they cannot cite the rule of law, against the witnesses.
Right. I have a question. What we realize is they're not really pursuing that direction with the whistleblowers, but we have several whistleblowers or important people in the disclosure field that suddenly get cancers and die. I know it started with Stephen Greer and Sharon Aramaic back in the late 90s. They were at the Prophets Conference, and there was a third person. 3 of them got cancer. Stephen survived, and the other 2 were dead within a year. And then recently we lost Lloyd Pye, who was, figuring out the Sitchin information. So I think that they do get rid of some key people, and I don't know how they make the decision to do that, but it seems like you have somebody that's really coming on ready to disclose major things or saying things, and next thing you know, they've got terminal cancer and they die in a couple months. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's like a mafia, but a very sophisticated one that has enormous, huge resources and connections into everything. And, as Kennedy and Eisenhower both warned us, they have, warned about the secret societies and secrecy. Even the first CIA director, Hillenkotter, he wanted to have an open congressional hearing. This is back in 1947. But his main concern was the dangers of the excessive secrecy surrounding the extraterrestrial issue, and not a concern about the extraterrestrials, but more about the abuses that can happen. And it seems like his worst fears manifested as time went on.
Wow. Okay, we have about 4 more minutes before the break, so continue. This is fascinating. Thank you.
So, what happened was after I was on CNN with the rest of the witnesses, CBS sent a special assignment team to interview me. And I told them, look, I'm not going to do this interview unless you guarantee that I can say that we have the witness scientists that can bring out a solution for the world. They promised up and down. And let's see, if we have 4 minutes, I think I'll have just enough time to play what CBS did, which is basically a cookie cutter. 2 minutes. Okay, we got 1 minute and 26 seconds. Here we go.
We are not alone. That's the message a group of pilots, scientists, and former government officials want Congress to hear. Ken Shotnick shows us tonight what some people are calling a UFO cover-up.
I've never seen it. Look at that.
I don't know, but I got it on tape.
A strand of moving light in the sky over Phoenix. A bright glowing streak dashing through West Covina. What looks like a flying saucer tracked on radar over Mexico City. Are these UFOs caught on tape? Dan Willis is a former radio operator for the Navy.
I took personally communications from ships that were reporting the extraterrestrial craft merging out of the ocean and shooting off into space.
He's among a group of scientists, military, and former FAA officials calling for congressional hearings to establish the presence of UFOs and extraterrestrials. 21 members of that group already have testified in Washington for what's known as the Disclosure Project. Dr. Stephen Greer is the director of the Disclosure Project. He's gathered 400 witnesses who say it's time for government secrecy to end.
We can establish through this testimony that these objects of extraterrestrial origin have been tracked on radar going thousands of miles per hour.
It's come to a critical point where the truth needs to be revealed to the people.
They believe a congressional hearing is the only way to set the record straight. The Disclosure Project has its work cut out for it because as of right now, no congressional hearings are planned. For CBS 2 News Special Assignment, I'm Ken.
Notice the cookie
They keep saying
format. You know, we are not alone, and the only thing out of 45 minutes of interviewing about all this thing was I said we've reached a critical point where the truth needs to be revealed to the people, but the truth about the technologies that have been hidden in these projects never got out to the people because the lady who was doing the producer was in tears. She said, I know I promised you, but the higher executives made me cut that part out. You tell me what incentive would somebody have for such an important statement that an energy solution that could get us off of nuclear oil and coal to the world would be cut out when it only takes me about 15 seconds to say that.
Well, they don't want that out. It's obvious because that'll undermine their power and control and their money flow. They want to kill us.
Yeah, we'll talk about these higher executives when we come back.
All right, we're at the top of the hour, and we'll be back in 5 minutes after this commercial break.
Radio at freedomslips.com. We'll be right back after this message.
Ho, ho, ho. Merry Christmas.
And welcome to Revolution Radio. If you have a child, a grandchild, a cousin, neighbor child, friend's child, well, be here Christmas Eve because it's going to be a blast. Santa has agreed to be here again with us this year, and he will be live with Revolution Radio straight from the sleigh, making calls to his favorite little ones. So, man, let's make this a fun and positive holiday season and really kick off Christmas Eve. And all you have to do is send an email to santa@freedomslips.com with a number that we should call and the name of the child that we are calling. And along with Santa will be Mrs. Claus and Santa's head elf, Sydney Bean. So don't miss out. It should be a lot of fun for everyone. And you all have a wonderful holiday season right here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, where love and light should shine all year round.
Ho, ho, ho. Merry Christmas.
Tune in Tuesdays at 12 noon Eastern on Studio A to hear Tammy Adams share her knowledge of an unknown realm on Talking with Your Angels. Join Tammy as she uncovers hidden secrets about the spiritual world of angels, ghosts, and other entities that have been with us longer than we know. Tammy is a psychic, a teacher, a spiritual coach, a leader in her field, and will be sharing her information and stories with you. So join us on Tuesdays at noon on Studio A. With Tammy's guidance, you'll find out who has been watching over you from the other side, and soon you will be talking with your angels.
Join Revolution Radio every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Studio B for Momentary Zen with host Zen Garcia at freedomslips.com, the People Station.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Sacred Matrix on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com with your hosts, Janet Carelesson and Dr. Sasha Lesson. Before we go back to our incredible show with Dan Willis, I'd like to remind you that Revolution Radio is listener-supported. So please go over to the website, link on the website, the donate button, and donate what you can at this time. $1, $5, $10, $15, $20, $100, whatever you can donate helps us bring you these incredible programs, and we do thank you for your donation. All right. Dan, are you there?
Yeah. I am, and
yeah.
I just want to tell all the listeners, yes, support Revolution Radio. It's the alternative media that Brzezinski, the National Security Advisor, they're deathly afraid that there's a global awakening happening across the planet, which is happening through the alternative media, and they don't have any control over that because it's not the mainstream media. And they're doing everything they can. You know, they made a new amendment to the NDAA, which allows the military, the CIA, NSA to use their sock puppets, trolls, and shills in order to counter the perspective views that are being expressed and shared across the entire internet on the planet, so that they can try to manipulate the perceptions. So alternative radio is something you definitely want to support.
Great. Thank you for saying that. Did you want to say something, Dr. Lesson? We don't want to leave you out here.
Oh, it's obvious that the truth embargo about the extraterrestrials and why it's being reduced to lights in the sky and sneering matter really has to do with that. You're going to see all the false flags that have hidden the mass murders and genocidal programs of those in charge of the planet.
Right. The media is controlled, and they of course control Hollywood. So we have to look at all the films that are being put out there and the messages within them. How they don't let anything out there that doesn't serve them in some way. And so even what we're doing on all these alternative shows, they use that they try to make us look ridiculous, and that laugh factor, that giggle factor. So you're looking at it from the CNN and the news, but we have to look at the whole spectrum, the programming that's in our music and our commercials and television and everything going back 100+ years, this psychological manipulation. But I'm really fascinated with your story. I'll let you continue. I'm sorry that I interrupt, but I'm so excited about what you're saying.
No, you're very, very correct, Janet. No, our according to the briefing that Ronald Reagan got from his CIA director, William Casey, that according to Project Dove, every single movie in Hollywood that has anything to do with extraterrestrials the script has been with CIA liaisons and Air Force that ever since the day the Earth stood still in 1951. And you look back over the movies, all the movies with extraterrestrials wanting to kill all of us and take over our planet, it definitely puts a fear association into the subconscious of millions of minds. And there was a report back in 1967, I believe, from a report from Iron Mountain that talked about they were planning on developing a hoax threat from outer space. And, when Brenner von died in 1977, Carol Rosin, who was his spokesperson, she said that the first threat was going to be the Soviets. And we know that was a lie. And how do we know that? Because if you look back through the history, with Allen Dulles bringing the entire Nazi intelligence into the CIA through a deal they made because Truman was afraid of the Soviets. They had a paranoia about it. And the Nazis had far greater Soviet intelligence, so they hid it in the Bavarian mountains in these microfiche. So they used it as a trading table to bring in over 3,000 Nazi intelligence spies into the CIA and rewrote the paperwork again for 5,000 Nazis, which went through Argentina and throughout Latin America and, Project Paperclip. But not all the top scientists came over in Project Paperclip. The top scientists were missing, along with 250,000 other Germans and over 100 U-boats of the most advanced design, all believed to go into Base 211, which was the Antarctic base that the Nazis built, and that they had flying disc factories in Germany. One of the witnesses, Colonel Wendell Stevens, was aware of documentation where there was nine facilities building these. The ninth was destroyed, and 8 of them were relocated, mostly to New Schwabenland, which was the Antarctic base, into Brazil and into up by Norway. And, as we were talking earlier, we were talking about the mercury that was used in the alien reproduction vehicles. Well, as you know, the Nazis went all over the world looking for ancient occult knowledge, and in the ancient Vedas they talk about the Brahmadas using the Mercury engine. Well, in my own research, I just happened to find in 1944 there was 2 Nazi U-boats that were sunk. Both of them were carrying huge, one had 67 tons of mercury, and the other one had 33 tons. In fact, it's leaking up in Norway, causing an environmental damage. So that's a lot of thermometers. You know what I mean?
That's a lot of thermometers. Well, wait, this is fascinating. I have a couple. I know you have a whole thing planned, and we'll get to it. If we don't finish this show, we'll do another one. Trust me, I want to hear your whole story because you're really very knowledgeable. But a couple things came to mind. The day the Earth stood still seems to be somewhat different because it was the first one that was showing that the extraterrestrials were intelligent, that Michael Rennie, Klaatu, had a heart, he loved, he had compassion, and that they were able to stop all the electricity and they were compassionate. They didn't stop it in critical places like hospitals and life support and stuff like that. And I think that maybe is something that may happen if the extraterrestrials have to intervene from prevent us from destroying ourselves. I don't think they're going to let us do the nuke stuff. That's my conclusion. But then they went on to produce there's a lot of Hollywood that like Close Encounters of the Third Kind. They're showing that the extraterrestrials are kind and loving, not necessarily that they're going to come down here and take us over and eat us. So that's a whole show in itself there. And then the second thing I was saying, what you said, was that Stuart Swerdlow, who's been on my show and is a friend of ours, he was talking about the false flag event of the extraterrestrials, and it's been known for years. He was in the Montauk Project, but they were going to include the second coming of Christ, and that's why he went back in the time travel and got the blood sample from Christ in one of his visits back in the biblical times. Okay, back to you, or Sasha, did you want to say something?
I'm tracking Dan. He's telling us a story about New Schwabenland and the base down there, and I want to keep tracking. I want to hear the rest of the story.
Okay, so any feedback on what I just said, and then go on to Sasha's thing, which he wants to hear about the South Pole.
Well, I went off kind of on a tangent on that, but basically I was saying what Werner von Braun was saying was that he was led into meetings where they showed future false flag plans in order to create their global fascist government. And the first one was the Soviets And what happened was Allen Dulles, along with General Donovan, which was OSS originally, and General Reinhard Gehlen, head of Nazi intelligence, were lying to President Truman on the Soviet, because Truman wanted to dismantle the CIA, but instead they went into black projects. They started funneling in. They spent over $8 trillion based on that lie, which created the Cold War. And so the next of the threats would be terrorists. And as you know, after we did the press club, 4 months later, we have the terrorist event in order to continue. And then the final card, after asteroids, would be the extraterrestrial threat. And, it's interesting when you look at the movies. Kennedy was said, about secret societies. Well, you think about the Rothschilds tied in with Adam Weishaupt and the Bavarian Illuminati and infiltrating into the Scottish Rite of the Freemasons back in 1776. I had an interest in this because my grandfather was a 33rd degree Mason and his father was a 32nd degree Mason, all in the Scottish Rite. And what happened was, if you look at all the presidents and everything, except for Lincoln and Kennedy, just about everyone had a Masonic association. And if you look at some of the top movies on extraterrestrials, all of these movies I'm about to read were all done by Freemason directors, and that is Close Encounters of the Third Kind, E.T. the Extraterrestrial, Taken, Aliens 1 through 4, Independence Day, the big psyops one, 2001, The Space Odyssey, Star Wars, Star Trek, Men in Black, War of the Worlds, X-Files, on and on. There is a agenda, according to William Casey, who was the CIA director. He said, we'll know our job is complete when everything the public knows is wrong. In other words, there's a complete indoctrination, and the whole thing. The bankers that were.
That's the point. If everything we think we know is wrong, are they even controlling this information that we are putting out on these alternative shows? Have they figured it out down to that level? Because they're the masters of psychological manipulation. And so I'm just putting that out there. It's like, it just dawned on me. I get downloads and it's like, yeah, everything is controlled. And I went, everything is controlled. Are we being duped as well? So I don't know. I'm just putting it out there. But you're saying that Roddenberry was a Freemason too? I loved Roddenberry. Tell me, don't tell me. No, it can't be.
I think one of the things is you allow everything to go out. You get to a point where nothing's more right than anything's wrong, and no one seems to care intensely about the suffering that the present matrix is causing.
Yeah, I guess that's the bottom line. Okay, back to you.
Well, the psychological operations, in order to find out what's going on, why the world is the way it is today, everybody, like in the movie The Matrix, the people seeing the glitches in the reality, and the movie's not matching the subtitles kind of things, where people sense something's not right, even though, it's very carefully polished and everything. If you go all the way back to the end of World War II, just before that, the Nazis had a fallback plan that they were planning on, and apparently they escaped, and they, we won the war with Germany, but the Nazis escaped. But what they planned was what they called Dalkenschallenskrieg, which means worldview warfare. In other words, to create this matrix of perception, to infiltrate into the United States, and over a long period of time, as the generations are born into this false, agreed-upon reality, how they planned to control the education, which they did. In 1946, the Rockefeller Foundation rewrote the official history of what really happened with World War II with the Nazis, which totally hid the banking connections that was involved with and the occult connections with the Nazis. In 1957, they took out all the aspects of consciousness connected with psychology and sociology. It was 30 universities worldwide. They were afraid that we'd become aware of the powers within us, and it could undermine government authority. And so, in 1983, there was 50 corporations controlling the media. Now there's only 5. And that, we have the movies being altered. We have our mainstream media being altered. We have our education with the books being rewritten falsely to hide these connections. So basically, their worldview warfare has been very effective, where everybody is born into this reality. It's what causes the giggle factor you mentioned earlier, because we've been so indoctrinated into a false reality. When we start hearing about things that are so continually officially denied again and again and repeated, it's almost like a nervous laughter, because because it's outside of our framework. And in fact,
right.
It's so bizarre, it trumps any kind of science fiction movie you could possibly think of. It, you know what I mean?
Well, the whole system is Orwell's 1984. The continual in 1984, the world was continually at war, and there were 3 major countries. But if you think of it in terms of there are 3 major religions that are behind all the wars, and that the religions are a part of this psychological manipulation, the Muslim, Christian, and Jewish religions, we're in continual state of war. And also patriotism is another divide and conquer strategy. So you have that factor, and then, the media is controlled, and everything's controlled down to the minutia, and they're constantly rewriting our history. Like you said, they rewrote World War II. So we have no idea how to know if anything's real. There is no the truth. There is no reality. All we have is consensus reality that we can get through the day, but that's got nothing to do with probably anything that actually happened in the past. The past is gone, and we can't even cover it or prove it for the most part because it's being manipulated.
The people of this planet don't want war. That's why every war starts with a false flag situation. Back in 1933, the fascist bankers, Prescott Bush, the grandfather of the Bush family, and Rockefeller and J.P. Morgan were planning on getting Marine Corps General War Hero to get like 500,000 troops, storm the White House, and put in a fascist government and put in death camps to get rid of undesirable, except we have a whistleblowing hero in General Snedley Butler that basically infiltrated the plot and exposed it. And later he wrote a book called War is a Racket, where he highlights that a few individuals make huge amounts of profit off the cost of many lives. I was in combat action in Vietnam after Kennedy was killed. Kennedy was planning on stopping the Vietnam War, and he was also planning on getting us off the Federal Reserve. And what happened after he was murdered, LBJ, Lyndon Johnson, basically reversed that and escalated the war. So 58,000 young guys had to die in that terrible war, and I feel bad about all the guys in the Middle East having to go through what they do. We don't, if we really want to honor the military troops and the military people, we have to look at what is the root cause of these wars? Who's behind? What interests are there? What financial interests are there? And what are the false flags that lead us into these things? Even when the Joint Chiefs of Staff presented to JFK their plan to shoot down Americans in a plane in Operation Northwood, this type of morality, it's not sustainable for the future of humanity to be operating like this. But anyway, let's get back to media control. I found an interesting thing having to do with the Easter Bunny. In other words,
go for it.
A very interesting line. This basically establishes somebody took all the networks of ABC, NBC, CBS, all of them, in different states across the United States, and everybody, basically your anchor people on your television screen are basically reading a script that's comes from one source. And they just happen to record this, and I won't play the whole thing because it's way too long, but it shows that everybody's reading a very unusual script regarding the Easter Bunny may lose some spring of its step this year due to economic sanctions. And you notice that everybody's repeating the exact same line that they're being fed to.
Consumer news, economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the
Anyway, I won't play the whole thing. It goes on for 2 minutes. But what it shows is that the main control of the distribution of the information is basically, I used to be an ABC newsman. I used to be chief engineer for the most powerful FM station on the West Coast. And I used to peel off the teletype from AP and UPI and read the news. I just assumed that, the news I'm getting is, it's a straight scoop, and we have a free press. And,
yeah.
And, here's what 3-time Emmy Award-winning journalist Amber Lyon was saying about CNN.
What CNN is doing is they're essentially creating what some people have termed infomercials for dictators, and that's the sponsored content that they're airing on CNN International that's actually being paid for by regimes and governments. I mean, this violates every principle of journalistic ethics because we're supposed to be watchdogs on these governments. We're not supposed to allow them to be paying customers as journalists.
And just this year,
that was great.
Just about a month ago.
That was great. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just about a month ago, a very brave individual who was 25 years a journalist is spilling the beans that basically the CIA pays off everybody in order, it gives them what to report on, and that I found this a very interesting testimony. He has a little bit of an accent. It's Germany, but he was writing for the American press, and here's what Dr. Yudo had to say.
Well, I've been a journalist for about 25 years, and I was educated to lie, to betray, and not to tell the truth to the public. Now, you asked, what have I done for intelligence agencies? So, please see, most of the journalists you see in foreign countries, they claim to be journalists, and they might be journalists, European or American journalists, but many of them, like me in the past, are so-called non-official cover. That's what the Americans call that. I have been a non-official cover. Non-official cover means what? It means you too work for an intelligence agency. You help them if they want you to help them, but they will never, when they find out that you're not only a journalist but a spy too, they will never say, oh, this was one of our guys. They will not know you. That means non-official cover. I give you an example, not the German foreign intelligence, Bundesnachrichtendienst. It is just a sister organization of the Central Intelligence Agency. It was founded by the American Intelligence Agency. So one day, the BND, this German Foreign Intelligence Agency, came to my office at the Frankfurter Allgemeine in Frankfurt. And they wanted me to write an article about Libya and about Colonel Muammar Gaddafi. I had absolutely no secret informations regarding Colonel Muammar Gaddafi and Libya. But they gave me all these secret informations, and they just wanted me to write, to sign the article with my name. I did that, but it was an article that was published in the Frankfurter Allgemeine that originally came from the Bundesnachrichtendienst, from the German Foreign Intelligence Agency. So do you really think that this is journalism, intelligence agencies writing articles?
It's important to understand that they need to control the perception in order to keep these secret operations hidden, because this whole thing started back with Allen Dulles and Operation Mockingbird back in 1950, where they started relationships, and they were doing this way back in I think it was 1917, where Warburg, J.P. Morgan, and Rockefeller, these names keep popping up all the time, bought all the main newspapers, like 25 of them across the United States, so they can control the perception of the world, which was later controlled by the Council of Foreign Relations, which is very involved in all this, and the think tanks. So what's been happening is what the Nazis termed Weltanschauungskrieg, in other words, worldview warfare, has been very, very active.
Successful.
And it's because, you have to think about it. If we had faster than light craft back in the 50s, that means that all these things in NASA, these rockets and stuff like that, they're expensive Hollywood props. Although the people in NASA believe to do what they're doing is, the state-of-the-art technology, right? But just like Donna Hare said, who, was one of the 21 witnesses, she doesn't know how they do it, how some people can know and other people not. And that the astronauts were told to keep quiet on this whole thing, which we have, astronaut Edgar Mitchell, who's basically said after Kennedy, they stopped, with the briefing, and that Gordon Cooper, who saw in Edwards Air Force Base an alien craft land, and his film crew filmed it, but the CIA came in and confiscated it, just like with John Callahan, his experience with the CIA. So they keep confiscating this stuff and keep trying to cover it up. We even had some of the witnesses, you think of the movie Men in Black, where people are trying to keep quiet. One of the witnesses, Daniel Morris, who actually wasn't able to give his testimony. He was there. He kind of freaked out in front of the 22 cameras, and we had to replace him with somebody else. But here, he was a cosmic level NRO operative that was basically what the Men in Black do. Here it is.
I would go interview people that claimed they had seen something and try to convince them they hadn't seen something, or they were. Well, if that didn't work, another team would come in and give all the threats and threaten them, their family, and so on and so forth. And they would be in charge of discrediting them, make them look foolish, or so on and so forth. Now, if that didn't work, then there was another team that put an end to that problem, one way or the other. Secretary of Defense Forstall was the first real powerful known person that was eliminated because he was going to release the information. And nobody has ever paid for that crime. That crime had never been really thoroughly investigated by forces to see what happened to him. But most people know that he was thrown out the window of the hospital. Yeah. And he wasn't killed by being thrown out the window, but he never got up alive.
And what was happening is the Secretary of Defense, James Forstall, under a Truman administration, he was having a nervous breakdown because just earlier, he was murdered in 1949. In 1946, I believe, he assigned Admiral Byrd, who was a 33rd degree Freemason, with a complete military armada of aircraft carriers, a destroyer, a submarine, a full-on armada, go down and destroy the Nazi base in Antarctica. And what happened was flying discs came shooting out of the water and with laser beams and things wiped out half of the fleet. And when Admiral Byrd came back, he was debriefed and couldn't say anything. And Forstall was mumbling about the Nazi base and everything, and they were afraid he was going to spill the beans. So that's what happened with that.
Okay, I have a question. Or just a statement. One of the things, the strategies they have is if somebody witnesses, like Clifford Stone was saying, they were part of this retrieval team. What they do is eventually they break up the team and they relocate them into different parts of the planet. You know, if they're in the military, they reassign them, and then over time, people start thinking, was that real? That can't possibly be real, that I was a part of that. Did I really see that? And so even the subconscious starts to doubt what it experienced and what it saw.
Right. Yeah, that's a typical method of it. It's it's sad, because what happened was, during the Truman administration, by the request of General Twining to set up a secret government within a government. In other words, to create a special unit called Majestic 12 in order to oversee specifically that. In 1954, Eisenhower, when he was brought into the presidency, he was funded by his campaign that was by Rockefeller, and he did a secret executive order which basically put Allen Dulles in the head of the new MJ-12 group, in which they put all the members of the cabal basically into the Majestic 12, and that's 1954. Also is when they first had the first Bilderberg meeting, which was created by Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands, former Nazi SS officer. And so basically they have fully taken control of the situation. And General Lufkin was on his staff, and he was aware that, when the Nazis, a huge amount of gold and things, probably some of it from southern France, from King Solomon's treasure, which incredible amount of wealth of gold from other sources too. Operation Eagle Flight, they bought 750 corporations, and so the corporations were working with the CIA and everything. And what they were saying back in the beginning was there was two CIAs. One was hunting down Nazis, and the other one was recruiting them. And so what happened is the corporations that Colonel Corso mentioned about reverse engineering the technologies, Lockheed, Northrop, all the different corporations, basically they took our legal government out of the loop. And here's a little quick one on how he lost control.
But what happened was Eisenhower got sold out. I think that he realized that all of a sudden this matter is going into the control of corporations. He realized that he was losing control. He realized that the phenomenon of whatever it was that we were faced with was not going to be in the best hands, and those were as far as I can remember, that was the expression that was used. It's not going to be in the best hands. And so it has turned out to be.
And, so it has turned out to be. One thing I thought was kind of interesting was a document that was pulled out of the fire called the Byrne Memo, and it was basically Allen Dulles as MJ1 talking to the other Majestic 12 members, saying that, let's see, get the exact quote here, that as you must know, Lancer, the code word for JFK, has made some inquiries regarding our activities, which we cannot allow. Please submit your views no later than October. This was October, and November was when he was murdered. Your action to this matter is critical to the continuance of the group, unquote. And what was happening was Kennedy fired Allen Dulles for his subversive activities he was doing. Then after he was murdered, LBJ assigned Allen Dulles as the head of the Warren Commission and determined there was no conspiracy with the whole thing. Anyway, you dig into the whole thing and you see all the connections. But I'm wondering, when I got done with the press conference and we met 24 senators, Congress people, basically it's a hot potato that people just don't want to touch. We toured across in the major cities across the United States. I joined Dr. Greer and the whole West Coast. I was in all the major cities, Colorado, San Diego, LA, San Francisco, Oregon, Portland, everything. Without exception, every major network that covered it. San Diego had dancing alien dolls with smoke. San Francisco said, and we heard that they were told to be made fun of. They said that the Disclosure Project's looking to aliens to solve the world's energy problems. And in Portland, they were saying, free energy, UFOs, and they both look at each other and they break out in laughter and they say, come on, let's get on with the big story. This week, the bozos meet the bonkers in the playoff, and it goes on like that with the giggle factor.
Right.
So they very effectively keep it out. So people keep supporting Revolution Radio. Get the truth out there.
Right. So they keep manipulating everything, and it's a bunch of spin masters. And so how do we get out of this? But anyway, finish your presentation, then we'll talk about solutions. At least for where we're at the 35 after the hour. We've got about 20 more minutes or so.
We have 3 more minutes?
No, about 20.
Oh, 20 minutes. Okay.
Yeah, we're doing good.
Here's another interesting thing. After I put on online fax. I sent I allowed faxes from people all over the world to send about 30,000 faxes, and they all responded. And you can, if you go to www.thewebmatrix.net, you can see them. I posted them all online, what the president and all the representatives were responding to this issue. Basically, they're out of the loop and giving old antiquated Project Blue Book denials and NASA and stuff like that. Basically, nobody wants to touch it. They don't want to jeopardize their position, is what I get the feeling. Only one representative we met in his office said, the time, because you're here, I know the time is short. A secret government is controlling this issue, which kind of surprised me, So, after doing all this, I realized that, all the channels for change seem to be a compromise. So Dr. Greer set up a corporation to try to find scientists and inventors in the civilian sector, since we couldn't bring the people in the black projects out with technologies, which is way beyond what anybody has in their garage or laboratory. And so we had a database of about 300 inventors. I'm one of a team of 6 technical advisors. One of them was murdered, Eugene Malov, when we first started. He was about ready to release something. I was flying all over the planet. I was down in the Dominican Republic with this one inventor who said 2 days before that there was 2 CIA operatives there that came to him and told him, if this works, you're dead. I've met with so many scientists that had their laboratories cleaned out. Physicists that one had a crystal that was producing huge amounts of energy. I met with a group of scientists in San Francisco back in 2001. Nassim Harim was there along with Dr. Greer and a bunch of other scientists, and they all had their horror stories to tell. And after I spent a decade and most of my personal finances on trying to bring a solution out to the world, meeting with all these different inventions, and I've seen things work, and we've had murders happen with some of the inventors. But what happens is National Security Act orders get thrown on these people as soon as they try to bring these things out. And just recently was made aware that there's a secret program. Let me bring this up here. There's a secret program within our patent office that I just learned about. And it is... Sorry, I meant to be more organized here and pop this thing right up. Here it is. The secret program in the U.S. patent is called Sensitive Application Warning System. In other words, it's called SAWS. So that everybody in the patent office is briefed that anything that comes in offers any kind of energy solution or even anti-gravity, anything that produces anything that appears to violate the laws of physics or offers a solution for energy to the world is basically the people get. I just talked to a scientist last week. In fact, he sent me a copy of his national security order, where basically you cannot talk to anybody about it. The whole thing goes dead. And so not only do they keep this quiet regarding these illegal operations with these black unacknowledged special access projects, USAPs are called, which means that it doesn't matter who you are, CIA director, president of the United States, you're denied access and you're lied to that it doesn't even exist. You can't get at this. And if you try to produce it on your own in the civilian sector, you'll get a national security order slapped on you. And the people of this planet...
And they buy them out. They come in and they go, well, that's great. Like we had a fellow that actually lived with us as a roommate for a while, and he had a free energy system with magnets, and he just kept getting bought out. And eventually, he sold out. And then they snuff it.
Yeah. They buy out or they threaten, or like one scientist was a Dutch inventor, incredible. He wrote several volumes on the advanced calculus of the dynamics of electron flow, which was way over my head on stuff. I'm more of a electronics science guy, but he was about ready to go to Europe. He had a little box that were producing 140 watts of electricity, and he was found dead in the airport parking lot. So
what about Mayron Keshi, he has all these solutions, and he said he's going to go around all this, but we've never seen he can come from it. Anyway, you may not know who that is, but we've seen a lot of people say...
I'm sorry, Janet, could you say it again? Sometimes the audio is bad.
Mayron Keshi, and he is, he's not in our country here, and he was aware of this problem. And he was announcing that he's going to go around it, and so he got. He's not dead, but what happens all the time? They never get out. So we need to go beyond that and see what we can do about. We're never going to get disclosure the way this is going, and there's cures for all diseases. There's alternative energy systems that'll. Our planet is dying. We were talking to another whistleblower yesterday, and he was saying, we don't have long before the whole thing shuts down and self-destructs because we keep breeding like rats, and it's unsustainable. The whole system is unsustainable. And then he revealed that the Georgia Guidestones was put in place by Carter. It was part of the Carter. He was an insider with the financial system, which is the major control mechanism of the planet. And he revealed yesterday, I was in meetings with Jimmy Carter when they said we're going to, 2 years before he was elected, they said he's going to be the president. We have Andrew Basiago that was in meetings, and he said, they're going to have, Bush 1 and Bush 2 and Carter and Clinton. So there are no elections. There is no freedom on our planet. What can we do about all this stuff?
They control both sides. That's why I think the awakening that's happening on the alternative media, even though they've got all these trolls and they've got all this automated software to create all these fake identities in order to give a fake consensus of what the population is thinking on the internet. They're desperately trying. They're afraid because people are starting to put the pieces together. The same group that's been continually saying, there's no evidence, and with UFOs and extraterrestrials, there's no, we don't have any advanced technology that we're hiding. The same group that is putting national security orders on keeping anybody in the civilian sector to bring out a solution that the world desperately needs. Because if we could bring out a solution, we could retrofit these dangerous leaking nuclear reactors with zero-point energy generation. I've seen things work. And then eventually we can get rid of all these power lines all over the place because we can start building small units that every home and business could have one. So we don't need power distribution lines, which are CME susceptible anyway. In fact, everybody could have a vehicle that could be electric, that has an onboard power that doesn't need ever be plugged in. We can phase out all of the millions of internal combustion engines by doing a little retrofit with a hydrogen conversion so they can run on water. But they're basically very inefficient, the internal combustion engine. And eventually, with anti-gravity technology, we don't even need roads. People can be living in remote areas without damaging the beauty of the planet. They have classified technologies that can remediate this dangerous radiation. They view basically the humanity as like a resource. And they feel like the Georgia Guidestones type of thing, where between the GMOs and the chemtrails and the mercury inoculations and the fluoride in the water, all these different ways to slowly poison and retard humanity, not only technologically but physically as well. That's it seems to be continually their agenda tied in with their corporations, but their main weapon is psychological warfare. In other words, so long as most of the people are still unaware of what's going on behind the scenes, and they are basically looking at your mainstream media as their primary source of information and not listening to Revolution Radio like they should, you don't get the picture. But as more people awaken, I believe in a collective consciousness that the human race has on this planet. And as more people, I think they said...
Interject with the different solutions is, and I'll go back to you, is that they have the pyramids are still active. Linda Moulton Howe, Whitney Stryver had a whistleblower who said there's a huge pyramid up in Alaska, and it's working, and there's enough power just from that one pyramid to power the entire Canada, the entire country of Canada. So we're discovering there's like a grid that was put up by the Anunnaki. It wasn't human, it was extraterrestrial, but we are they. I didn't get to talk to you about the Anunnaki factor. That could just be reactivated at any time and power the whole grid. That was the first one, and it was a non-polluting system based on technologies that a lot of people are coming forth with. So there are solutions. The major solution, or the major question is, how can we get these solutions out there? Because every time we try to get anything out there, we've got the Illuminati, for the lack of any other word, or they the Anunnaki, or they the Archons. Who are these people that keep holding us back and are killing us? They have a depopulation agenda. They want to bring us down to 500 million planet-wide. That means 8 billion people are going to die. So what can we do? Ideas?
Yeah, well, you can tweet. You can go to the Paradigm Research Organization,
Paradigm, yes, that's it.
Send your tweets out, post on Facebook, share information with your friends, and I recommend going and doing a visualization. Since it seems like most of the traditional channels for change have been compromised by this group, if you go to thewebmatrix.net and click on Imagine This, I did a visualization that is basically, you could call it Brzezinski's nightmare, where people become aware, which I see happening. It's happening right now. People are becoming aware of the deceptions that they've been born into, and that there's an incredible world that could be happening.
Could you take us through it right now?
Oh, it's a bit long, but basically, in a quick, because we only have much time left, but essentially it's like the children in the future looking back through the history of the planet Earth and the challenges that we had to do with this small cabal that used deception in order to manipulate and control all of humanity. And that when the internet came about, it gave them another way to monitor us, like the NSA is doing. and that. But it also gave us a way to start sharing information, like on Revolution Radio and your Facebook and your emails and whatnot. And so what's happening is, as people start to put the dots together, and you look on the web, it's like everywhere, as people start to put the dots together, it started to create a global awakening on a collective consciousness level, as well as through the alternative media of the internet. And all of a sudden, all of their deceptions started to become transparent. And they became very nervous. And then people, we gave amnesty to the ones that were willing to come forward. And all of a sudden, they started to bring out the technologies and the whole this whole population issue is there's a humane, compassionate way to deal with all the people on this planet. If you think about the trillions of dollars we spend in wars that are fabricated a lot of times, that could be going to human life. Everybody in the least, their basics of fresh organic food and shelter. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I agree totally with what you're saying. There's a humane way, for the lack of any other word, and I can't believe that all the beings in existence, we have major contact happening with all these contactees. There's over 1 million that have been kind of documented or anticipated, people that are having direct experiences or contactees. I am a contactee, and my information with my beings that I interact with is that there are those who love us, and they're not going to let us go down this apocalyptic Armageddon nightmare scenario. We're going to be freed from this prison gang, this prison planet, very soon here, and not through death.
But using the meditation that Dan's proposing,
I love it.
What we're doing is we're allowing ourselves to somehow make contact with Pharaoh's heart, so that the cartel can empathize with us, and we can feel them, and we can feel our oneness, and somehow synergize instead of killing each other.
So, Dan, I invite you, since that's such a wonderful meditation, to get some nice, pretty music and speak it and put it on the website, and we will tweet and Twitter that one all over the place for people to listen to and those types of things, because you're basically inviting us to visualize, how this started and how we can go beyond it. Back to you.
I think it's powerful. I believe the visualization, especially because the only warfare they have is through deception, and truth, as you know, resonates within each one of us when we hear it. So a truth has much greater power than a lie. So when more people become aware, see, we only give them consent to do what they do only because we're unaware, and so long as their psyops is working, we continually to give them consent. But as people become aware that they've been basically pitted one against the other, and that we have, basically we are all one. We're all interconnected, as science is showing. And that as we become aware of these things, the collective, I think they said it was like, what is there, 7 billion people on the planet, and the square root of 1% is like just 8,000 people become aware of something. It affects the collective of the entire, because we're like a holographic aspect of the larger consciousness of which we all are a part of. And this is one of the reasons why they suppress the knowledge of consciousness in our education as well. I mean, more and more people researching this on their own, of course, but it's not like it's not like the past generations we've been developing this ever since. It's like right at the end of the movie here, we're just catching up on everything, becoming aware, because it wasn't. I was very naive when I went to Washington in 2001. I thought it was going to be a major world-changing event, but then when this company wanted me to write this article on who controls the agreed upon reality and why they want to hide this whole situation, I had to do research through reputable sources, historians, and put that together on the article. And all of a sudden, it shocked the hell out of me what has been hidden and how they essentially use the secrecy of first the Freemasons and then through the intelligence community behind the shield of national security to conduct all these operations and control the media, control the perception, which is the main, that's the main control, is the perception. The Nazis called it a matrix of perception. In other words, you cannot think about anything other than what they propagate through the psyops is what the agreed upon reality is. And so when people start to learn about this, it's like you get the giggle factor, but then when you start to look into it and find out the credible witnesses and the documents and everything that's supporting it, it becomes aware that, its very nature keeps it secret because it's hard for people to wrap their head around that, such a lie has been told and perpetrated upon the people of this planet.
Well, this is the key in your article. It's the agreed upon reality. So in some way, we are giving consensus to this current reality. So if we don't like it, we have to stop agreeing with it and change our channel, and we can change our perception by changing ourselves, which in turn will affect the morphogenic field and change our reality. So we're not victims. We can do something, and part of it is, like you said, visualizations, meditations, going to sacred sites, and envisioning something outside of this matrix, wrapping our heads around it, and then internalizing it and co-creating it, something like that.
Yeah, Steve Bass is going about it through the legal constitutional ways in order to bring a disclosure hearing. So I ask everybody to support him. Go to paradigmresearch.org, I believe is the website, and it'll tell you how to tweet. Right now there's a tweet storm where isn't that something? They've got all this technology and all the resources, and we're going to tweet, so.
With your work, Dan, because you're brilliant. I think you're awesome.
Well, I'm just one witness of over 500 witnesses, and I just feel like a moral responsibility to humanity on this planet. When I started seeing what's happening with Fukushima and what it's doing to the ocean and to life on the planet, and the Gulf oil spill and all these things are totally unnecessary. And the wars are unnecessary. We don't have to, the world could be so much better with these things disclosed. So all of the population of this planet could see it for what it is. And we can all vow never to allow these things to happen again.
Oh, and so your article is Who Controls the Agreed Upon Reality Through the Mainstream Media and Why They Fear Disclosing the Truth About the Extraterrestrial Reality. Where do they find that?
www.thewebmatrix.net.
Thank you so much. That was an awesome show. Thank you, Dan Willis. God bless you. Aloha. Say aloha.
This is disclosure.
This is disclosure.
My pleasure.
Hello, everybody.